Hi, I'm Dan Schaffer, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Phoenix Contact, and I'm joined by Mary DeAlba, Shop Floor Land Service Manager at SKF. How you doing, Mary?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here today.
Thanks for joining us. So we wanted to take this opportunity to just talk through an application, and actually it's more of an ongoing project that SKF has been having called the Smart Factory Initiative. And it's something that Mary and I have been working together on as a collaborative project, and Mary's the leader for SKF. So Mary, can you tell us a little bit about the project? It's been going on for a few years now.
4 years, about 4 years.
And what's interesting is Mary, you originally came from the IT side, and this is a project that very much plays into the OT, the plant side of the network. So it was kind of a journey for you to navigate the IT and OT connections, right?
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about how the project started and who was involved right from the get-go?
Yeah, sure. So it was about 4 years ago when SKF decided it was time for us to begin our digital transformation journey. And in order to do that, they started an exercise that involved a large number of people from both the IT side as well as the OT side. So we had factory managers involved, we had OT resources involved, we had IT network architects involved, IT security individuals involved, and we even brought out some outside consultants to try to kind of help us identify all the different areas that would build up this building block of digital transformation within SKF.
Okay, so when you say a large number of people, you're talking dozens of people.
Yes, dozens of individuals.
Across the board, so there were OT titles, IT titles, security-focused people, operational-focused people.
Yep.
How did those first few meetings?
There was a lot of contention because obviously on the OT side of the house, they have their way of working, whereas on the IT side of the house, we have a different philosophy with regards to security, networking, data, et cetera. And so we had to, everybody identified what their requirements were going to be for this digital transformation and how they thought it should actually function. And we had an Excel sheet with hundreds of requirements, both from the IT side, the security side, the OT side, and we basically had to categorize these into different work groups, and then all the individuals were split up into these different teams to be focused on their work groups in order to try to kind of meet each other halfway with regards to the requirements.
So this is really interesting because it's always fun to have these large projects, and IT and OT, from my point of view, it's awesome when there is that collaboration. Cybersecurity, smart factory, digitalization, those are big macro trends that we're seeing in the industry today. So when you have all of these people together and hundreds of requirements, one of my first questions would be, who is the sponsor of this? This almost has to be like a C-suite type of project where somebody way up at the top of executive management is saying, hey, everybody, let's all get together in a room. And we're going to try and figure this out.
Right. So, I mean, obviously the CEO of SKF it's time for SKF to join the digital transformation bandwagon and create our world-class factories. But we have a manufacturing capability council who was one of the sponsors of the exercise. And then on the IT side, we have an IT architectural council who was the second sponsor. So basically anything all of the outcomes of all the workshops and whatnot had to then be approved by both councils.
Okay.
And then, once we got the approvals in the various workshops, then it turned into begin the transformation, begin the journey.
So this was very much not an ad hoc, hey, everybody, let's sit together and try and figure something out. You were beginning with the end in mind.
Exactly.
From the very start.
Exactly.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got a spreadsheet now. So you've had some meetings. You've laid out some goals. You have a spreadsheet of hundreds or over 100 different requirements.
Right.
How do you negotiate? How do you horse trade all these requirements? Because I'm sure some of them are diametrically opposed to one another.
Yes, exactly. So my workshops were network related because I'm an IT architect on the network realm. So always on the enterprise office side, doing networks and firewalls and wireless, et cetera. And so that's why I was brought in to look at connectivity requirements from the factory and how we would go about accomplishing those. So my focus was specifically on wired networks, wireless networks, security of our factory channels. And so in the discussions with our OT representatives who had their philosophy of how to connect, that's where we ran into some contentions because specifically on the wireless side, we knew for sure, I already knew for sure that we were not going to be able to introduce a separate wireless solution in our factories because it would compete with our current enterprise office solution.
Same spectrum up there,
exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. And the requirements that they had for wireless were exactly the same as we had on our enterprise side. And so for sure, I was trying to convince them why it was a good idea not to try to go their own route with the wireless. And initially they were like, there's no way we're using office Wi-Fi for our factories. But eventually, as we started to present the details and show, it was almost more about, informing them, educating them, just like they had to do the same with me. And so then it became apparent, okay, we understand now why we have to use the same standard for both office as well as the factory. But then when it came to the wired, that's where I had to meet them halfway because I was, used to a specific office type of, architecture, infrastructure that I was familiar with, and they were more familiar with the industrial network, components, rapid repair, something that was not as complex and complicated to operate because they wanted that control over that environment because their machines are connecting to that environment. So it needed to be industrial, it needed to be simple, and then I would throw in, but it needs to be secure.
So well, let me ask you there, because that's one of the big OT, IT contention points is, from an OT standpoint, is protect the process, right? Keep the machines running, make your product, make your widgets, uptime. Yep. From the IT standpoint, it's always protect the data.
Absolutely.
Right, and that is, at the top of the CIA triangle. Yep. From an IT perspective, it's all about security, whether you're encrypting, whether you're restricting access. From the manufacturing side, it's always about the availability. We need those machines to run. Who cares if somebody can see what our set point is
exactly.
or something like that?
Exactly.
At what point was there an epiphany moment for you?
Yeah, well, I would say what we were able to agree on, because I am the shop floor LAN service owner, so we had conversations, what really is shop floor LAN? And we were able to agree by drawing it out on a whiteboard that shop floor LAN is really a combination of the office enterprise components that actually service the factory, like our wireless, like our LAN firewall that we use to divide our wireless from our factory, any switches that those wireless access points connect to, any type of hybrid cloud platform that we're putting on our DMZ on our LAN, that the applications that run on that service the factory. So that's part of shop floor LAN. But there's also the industrial side of shop floor LAN as well. And these would be the locally procured industrial switches, industrial firewalls at each of our channels. And the connectivity where that industrial environment marries that office environment, we were able to basically draw out almost like an S-curve as to all of this is shop floor LAN. And so if they were able to agree with me that these components that are really delivered by our office side marry into what they would then deliver from the industrial network side, that was basically the epiphany that we joined together at some point. So we have to agree how the relationship between the two environments will actually work.
Okay.
And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of kind of that shake hands across the table that I think they understood that I was willing and open to understand why it was they wanted control in certain areas. And as I exposed myself to the various products that would be used, I totally supported their philosophy and their method.
So how long did it take for that first epiphany where you're reaching across the table going, I get you now, you get
Right.
me, we understand, you've now drawn, if not a box, an oval or an S-curve as you describe it,
Right.
around this is what the shop floor layout is, this is where we're going to meet in the middle.
Right.
How long did it take to get to that point?
It was months. I mean, the whole exercise was somewhere between 7 to 10 months of constant meetings. And after the meetings, we put together these key decision documents as to various products that we were looking at, what the requirements were for like the network piece, the wireless piece. And then we had audio meetings where everybody was able to do question and answers related to the key decision documents, and then suggestions or changes, recommendations. Everybody was allowed their input to adjust these decision documents. So it was like a ongoing working effort between everybody involved for all the different workshops.
When we had talked originally about the project and how it was going, that was one of the things that really struck me is it was very collaborative.
Yeah.
Everybody had a voice. There were different stages and gates to say, okay, here is what we're proposing for this. Yep. Everyone gets a look at it.
Yep.
Everyone gets to comment, raise concerns.
Yep.
And then once it's accepted, there's buy-in, and once somebody buys in, they have a little bit of ownership, and they want to make it succeed.
Exactly.
They become an advocate, not somebody trying to pull it down or undermine it.
Yep.
So that's great. So even though that process took some months, it was worth it because it laid the foundation
absolutely.
that you needed there.
Yeah, and it also created a trust. There's always been an issue with trust, I think, between our OT individuals and our IT individuals because, like you said, there's a different philosophy, protect the process versus protecting the data. So I think when OT saw the willingness of IT to adopt some of the components that they were really fighting for, then it started to create a level of trust between the two organizations. And that was important for this to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely, because without trust, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
This concludes our first section of our discussion, Mary. And I think if we have some key takeaways, I think the planning. Well, maybe if we step back, mm-hmm. you had top level buy-in, executive level buy-in. Mm-hmm. You had planning where it wasn't just one or two people sitting in a room scheming this all out, on a whiteboard.
Right.
There was a broad consensus or a broad working group that consisted of a bunch of people from the OT side and different perspectives there, from the IT side, a bunch of different perspectives there.
Yep.
Security kind of layering on top, because what's the point of doing this if it's insecure and nobody's happy with it or can implement it anyway?
Right.
So you had that broad consensus, you had the planning that laid a good foundation. You discovered, OT and IT, that you can reach a consensus, you can trust one another, and there is a common ground. Everyone wants this project to work, everyone wants it to succeed. So when you start with that, you're setting yourself up for success.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then I think in the next section, maybe we'll talk about how it actually came together and some of the decisions that were made, and maybe a little bit more on the implementation side.
Sure.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.